Well, here we are on the final day of the excavation. We've still got a bit of recording and things to do, but what I'm going to do now is provide a brief summary of what we've found in this trench. One of the most exciting features has been the ovoid-shaped pit down there, which is now bottomed down to the natural sand. It appears to have been cut by this trench running through here, but its purpose remains a bit enigmatic. It is possible that we're looking at the equivalent of a topping out ceremony that we get today when a building's construction, but in reverse. In other words, the foundation deposit for a building. This kind of activity has been repeated at Halkon and Shiptonthorpe at the Roman settlements there. And here it is not just random rubbish. Many oyster shells are put in there. We've got large pieces of pot which have been reconstructed into almost whole vessels. We've got interleaved layers of roofing tile, and then on the top the whole thing is sealed carefully with roofing tile, and there's also stone around its perimeter. So it's deliberate, and we'd call it structured deposition. Probably, as I said, some kind of ceremony as the structure was constructed. So somebody's come along and robbed out the stone at one period. Over here, previously, we had a series of different floor surfaces, and we've got an account by Philip Corder, who excavated just outside our trench, of severe fire and burning of the late 3rd century building. And this looks to me as though it's a piece of a panel from a wall or something like that that's become carbonized and fallen off a structure as the thing was on fire. Moving over here, we've got a whole series of complex features. Running along this way, a whole series of rubble foundation with clay, and running across the trench we have another similar foundation feature. That in turn cuts a dark stripe running across, which is probably a foundation trench for a sleeper beam. So timber structure. It may be a robber trench, but there's no rubble at all in it, which suggests that it may be timber. And it's clearly earlier than this one running across the site, running east to west across the trench rather than the north-south feature here. So basically we know that just in our trench we've got a sequence of about 5 different phases of building. We're now underneath the courtyard building, which showed on the ground penetrating radar. And hopefully next year, when we have a clue in the pit over there, we'll be able to get down to the natural subsoil and down to the original setting up of the Roman fort at Brough. At this end of the trench was Philip Corder's excavation, which we've managed to tie in now using georeferencing into the plans of Corder, so we'll be able to match what we found this year into the 1930s excavations. On here we've got the floor surfaces of the courtyard, and you can see some solid material here, more rubbly material, and it's been argued that the reason these patches of soil are here is because the surfaces have got completely worn down. Well, yeah, I don't. This trench has only been open a week, but it was targeted on finding the defences that Corder discovered in the 1930s. And as you can see, we have actually achieved that. We've got the full width of the rubble core of the wall running here, and it does appear to be turning. But what is even more interesting is that we've got evidence of Corder's actual excavation trench. The gap in the stonework here is Corder's, and we even found his copper alloy ruler on the top that he's probably left behind. So rubble core of the wall and the dark area, you can just see the corner of a sandy bit here. So this is probably the robber trench where they've removed the facing stone from the wall. Unfortunately, it's been interrupted by tree rooting, but you can see stonework showing up here, suggesting that we're very fortunate to put our trench at the very part where it begins to curve round. You can see more stone from it here. Corder also describes a turf and clay rampart, and there's certainly quite heavy clay at the bottom of that trench there, the dark material, and over here, oh, this is never finished, not cleaned this year, the cracked surface is solid clay. So this fits absolutely with what Corder found in his trenches. So even though this trench is only open for a short time, we met our targets.
Okay.
When we first opened this trench, there was a layer of brick going right across, which took us a considerable amount of time to clear. There's much debate about what it was. It was clearly fairly modern, with the kind of material found with it. However, it became clear that we'd got very solid and very well made brickwork here. And as I said, there's considerable debate as to what it is. It could be an air raid shelter, and this being probably the outer reinforced wall, which we maybe taking an arch over the top, and perhaps the other wall lies at the edge of this field. Another alternative, and a man who worked for Yorkshire Water suggested that as it lines up with a roadside gully, it may be designed to take water through here to feed into what was known as Roman drain, which is the only bit of Roman brough that can be seen today, which is the ditch within the trees that runs right through and actually joins our first excavation on the other side of the lane that runs at the bottom of the birds playing field. This trench proved problematic, partly because up over there we've got, which most passers-by, the elderly passers-by, have suggested it's an air raid shelter. We're not absolutely sure about that, but that remains a strong possibility. There was this very thick layer of very uniform material over the top, and it is possible that it was simply pushed down from the construction of this, or perhaps one of the ramparts which they would have to push over before they constructed that. However, what we did find, it took huge effort, and most of this has been done by hand, was the sandy edge here of one of the ditches, which is traced by both Corder and Waiter. We're not sure which ditch this is. It's probably the inner ditch, or there's a possibility that it is the earlier ditch of the very first Roman fort here. You can see the clear edge when the fills start running up here. It's very moist underfoot, but you can also see we've got stone. We found Samian pottery in here as well. You can see it's much darker towards this side.